I call music, I hope this is on, I call music the mortar of humanity. Doesn't matter what your religion is, doesn't matter what your political views are, your ethnicity, your social background. All of us in this room can hear the same piece of music, and we're all feeling some version of the same thing. I don't think there's anything else in the world that can do that. It's hard to hate the person next to you when a piece of music is causing you to feel some version of the same thing. Now that song, Alfie, is from a movie of the same name. It's about a guy who has prowess. He's an expert. He has technique. His prowess, he can seduce women. Now, you might think this makes him about the happiest guy in the world. But in fact, he has no connection to his actions. He has no meaning behind what he does, and he ends up feeling very sad and unfulfilled. Now, the song is by Burt Bacharach and Hal David, and I've postulated that Burt Bacharach is the secret to life. Why is that? Well, we'll get to that in a few minutes. For now, I want to talk about music as a metaphor for life and happiness itself. And so to do that, we're going to talk about a flow. I think everything in the known universe is a flow. This piano appears to be very solid, but if the atoms and molecules weren't flowing together just right, this thing would be a nuclear explosion. And that replicates itself endless times in the universe, everything being based on a flow. We're going to talk about that too. I think that musicians, and I think in life it's probably a correlative, musicians have two wells. We have a spiritual well and a technical well. The technical well is filled up all our life long with all the stuff we learn how to do. So if you're riding a bike, you're filling up your technical well with okay, I've got to keep my balance, I've got to pedal just right, I've got to steer, I've got to watch out for things ahead. But the moment that you first ride is that moment where you forget all of that stuff. But the technical well, we fill up with the stuff we learn how to do. The spiritual well, we're born with. It's all of our emotions, the things that all of us can feel. But we fill that up too. We fill that up with our experience. We fill that up with loves, losses, triumphs, despair, hopes. The thing is, we fill up our technical well very consciously, and we fill up our spiritual well very unconsciously. The result is we think that what the world wants to see from us is our technique. I practice this stuff, and what you want to see is the stuff I can do. I don't think that way. I think that technique is fuel. It's fuel that's drawn upon unconsciously from the spiritual well. And what it does is it helps us express who we are and how we feel about things. So to do that, we have to understand context. What's a context for our life? Well, in music, context is everything. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite pieces is Beethoven's Fourth Piano Concerto. It's a beautiful, glorious work. It begins in a very confounding way. It begins with a short statement in the piano. Now that's unusual because most concertos start with a long statement by the orchestra. And this statement is so simple, it could have been a 50s rock tune. I'll play it without context. What is that? It's just the three simplest chords in music. Same chords as, like I said, a 50s rock song. There's no real melody except the top note to the chord. There's no real texture. Why did Beethoven write this? What's the context? How can I find meaning in this? Well, I thought about it for a long time when I practiced the piece, and I thought, the three simplest chords, simple texture, it must be primal. It must be taking us back to whatever that font is that all music comes from. So I thought, that's Mother Earth. The beginning of this concerto is this font that everything great comes from. And you need to approach it with reverence. Reverence for that whatever that is that everything springs from. So now I have a context. And hopefully my mind will allow itself into that spiritual understanding, and it will unconsciously draw the techniques it needs to express that. hope you heard a difference. All too often in music, the opposite happens. All too often, musicians say, oh, that piece of music, that's the perfect vehicle so I can show you all my cool stuff I do. I'm going to give you an example. I've heard this more times than I can tell you, and it's a pet peeve of mine. Okay, great. What I just played has nothing to do with that song. Nothing. The song might as well not exist. It was just there for me so I could show off all my cool stuff. I'm not a singer, but let me sing you the lyric to that song. Just friends, lovers no more. Just friends, but not like before. To think of what we've been and not to kiss again seems like pretending this isn't the ending. Two friends drifting apart. Two friends, but one broken heart. We loved, we laughed, we cried. Suddenly, love died. The story ends, and we're just friends. Why would anybody play this song the way I played it the first time? I recorded it that way many, many years ago. It's a long journey. It's this journey. Over here is check me out, and over here is, oh, there's something really special and beautiful about that music, and that's all that matters. And you can see my head's right in the middle, so I'm about halfway there. But I'm getting there. So the flow. There's joy in the flow. You know, remember Michael Jordan in his prime? When he got in the zone, and he couldn't miss. He'd be falling backwards, hitting his head on the hardwood, nothing but net. Tiger Woods used to be in that flow. But it's not just for Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods. Somebody roller skating down a boardwalk. You just see them. They're not thinking about their balance and the technique and their ankles. They're just in the joyous flow of something that is totally intent-driven. I watch my daughter knit. I see the same thing. She's one of the world's greatest knitters. So the flow can be evident in so many things. And so the question is, how do we get there? How do we get there? Well, the thing is, because we practice the technical well, we think that what we're trying to do is achieve our technique. So we need to be, practice makes perfect. So, okay, I've got to be perfect because that's what I practice. Well, as soon as you're trying to be something, what are you setting up the possibility of? Failing. I'm going to try, but I might fail. So now I'm going to get nervous and I'm going to have tension, which is a barrier to all things. So I tell my students, don't try, just be. You can't fail at being. You can't fail at the intent that you have. And so that comes back to the word that I think is most important. That word is trust. If we have worked on our technique and we understand that, and we know that we can do the things that we do, then we live in the spiritual well, and we trust that our mind will draw the technique it needs. And when the technique meets intent, the flow happens. And that's the beautiful thing. And isn't that what we want in our lives, in our personal lives, in our relationships? I don't want my wife to think, I am, to present to her, I'm powerful and technical and I can do things, and so you should love me and respect me. I don't want my coworkers to think that either. I want them, from me, to know I feel a certain way and it's the same way that you feel. We have the same hopes, we have the same goals. And together, we can draw on the energy of that together and create a culture that is positive. On the bandstand, when I'm playing with musicians and we're in the flow together, everything is easy. And when we're not, everything is hard. So, how is Burt Bacharach the secret to life? Well, Burt Bacharach wrote that song, Alfie, and I've done the math. He's sung it over 10,000 times. And yet, if he walked in here today with a voice no better than mine, which we know is not great, if he sat down at this piano and sang Alfie, you and I and everybody else in this room would be crying. It would sound like the very first time he was inspired to write and sing that song. Somehow, he can go back to that space, he can find it within himself, and renew that feeling every day. If I can wake up every morning and say, I love you to my wife, like the first time. If I can drive by Fairchild Garden on the way to work every day, and it looks as wondrous as the first time, isn't that the secret to life? So, what's your Alfie? What's the thing that matters so much to you that that's what you want to express? That's the you want to show the world, because that's where the flow comes from, and that's the secret to life.